What's up, everybody? How you doing? This is Eddie with the RRBG podcast. I'm being joined by a legend, Mr. Matt Pinfield. How are you, brother?
Eddie, what's going on, man? How you doing today?
Doing great, doing great. Before we started recording, listening to new music from the Deftones, listening to new music from the Ocean. Lots of great new music coming out.
Yeah, there really is, man. I'm really happy. I mean, that Deftones record is like a real great return to form, and I'm really happy that they put out a new record that's really strong and heavy. You know what I mean? And it's really cool because it's very heavy, and I love that. Last time I saw Chino and the Deftones was when they were opening for The Cure last summer. They did a show in Pasadena, California. Here, it was the Pixies, Deftones, and The Cure. And at the end, like the Cure don't let anybody really on stage. They have a separate passes for stage. But me and Chino went up there with his son, and we hung out. And Chino knows the lines to every Cure song. Like Disintegration, that album is one of his favorite albums ever. So he, man, he was just going off having a great time. So it's always good to see Chino.
That's awesome, man. And I'm glad to hear that you're still, in touch and going to shows. I mean, you are by far, I mean, the word legend is thrown around a lot, but you've been there. I would say from my childhood, you're one of the first podcasters, even though it wasn't really a podcast, but like 120 minutes is basically a podcast,
Yeah.
You're basically sitting there talking to the bands and without even knowing it, it's kind of shaped the direction that my life has taken, which is just being there with bands, hanging out, making friends, and having conversations and trying to expose the world to music that maybe, the radio has failed us in. Like, we get a lot of music through the radio, but, it's hard to discover really good new music on the radio these days, unless you're
It
doing it
is.
yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to do it yourself, and that's really the way things have gone. I mean, because one of the big problems with radio right now, and I'm on radio. I mean, I just recorded yesterday for a special coming up with Ozzy and Sharon. I did for the 40th anniversary of Blizzard of Oz. I sat down with Ozzy and Sharon for about an hour and 15 minutes to talk about the making of that record, and then went through some of the other stuff. But we have a long-term friendship, you know what I mean? And although they had not heard about the fact that I had been hit by a car at the end of 2018, and they were pretty blown away by that. And Ozzy was asking me how long it took me to start walking again, because he's been going through 18 months of after the surgery he had. And you know what he told me? If you're a Sabbath fan, and I know you are, he said to me that him and Tony Iommi are closer than they've ever been in their lives. Like, Tony has like been there for him.
That's great.
Because they've had their issues, obviously, over the years. Like, anybody, like any brotherhood, you're with four guys that long and that often. And yeah, he said that really, like, Tony's been there for him in a big way, and Jonathan Davis from Korn has been checking in on him all the time. But he was, he was really in good. He was good, man, and he was funny. And Sharon was as great as ever, because her and I, been friends for a long time. And, we did an Ozfest album years ago that I did, but was always there shooting at all those shows. So, but that was cool, and I mean, we just, we still love the music. I mean, I tell you, during this pandemic, Eddie, that's been the hardest thing is not being able to go to much live shows. I mean, I've seen a few things, and the reason why is because, Partner for Pyros with Perry Farrell with Jane's Addiction, they did like a backyard performance for the Lollapalooza thing that ran for a whole weekend when it would have run. And so I watched them do a couple songs, and it was the first time they performed acoustically since they played on 120 Minutes 25 years earlier. So that was pretty cool. And then Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top did a gig with Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses, and that was part of this Detour Festival we did because we were raising money for the National Independent Venue Association and Music Cares. And so we, like, I saw shows that we saw Billy Gibbons, and like Macy Gray did a set of like Pretenders and Radiohead songs, and it was interesting. But not a lot of live music like I wish I was seeing. And I was going out to shows still, like, even in, at 3 to 5 nights a week. Nice. I love to see live music. I love to support bands that are up and coming too. I was talking to friends earlier about the fact that whenever I go out to a show, I always buy a shirt from a band because they need that merch money.
Yep.
Because streaming doesn't pay what it, what selling CDs did. It's like they make 10% of what they would have made from selling physical products. So whether they have a vinyl album or a T-shirt, it's always cool to support. you know?
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, before the pandemic, I was going out 3 or 4 times a week, different shows. I believe the last show I was able to attend before everything got locked down was here in LA was Cult of Luna
Oh,
and Intronaut and Emma Ruth Rundle. I
yeah,
think
I heard that. Was that at the Fonda, or where was that show?
I think it was the Fonda. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I live around a block from there, so
Nice.
you
Yeah.
know.
I just moved like 2 blocks from the El Rey Theater, and I was super excited because we found this awesome place close to all the venues. I'm like, great, I'll be able to go out more. Nope.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I mean, I love the El Rey. That was one of the last shows I saw. Was Des Rocks there and the Glorious Sons from Canada, and then my friend Josh was, goes by the name Mondo Cosmo, played the hi hat. I wasn't gonna go out that night. He called me. I'm like, "What time are you going on?" He goes, 10:30, and I said, "Shit, that's late." I'm like, "Nah, I'm gonna go support him." And I went there, saw the show, bought a T-shirt, and that was the last thing that I'd seen. So I just can't wait for the music to come back. Live shows are just such a big part of what I love to do,
Yeah.
and go out and support. And like more than ever, I mean, one of the things that's just really tough on all the young bands and all the bands that have cult followings and mid-size, is that a lot of times during this whole situation, they're all getting ready to go out on the road, and they spend all their money printing merch and doing things they wanted to do, and that stuff's sitting there now, and they were dependent on that to live on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, anything that I can do as far as the charities we've been doing with Music Cares and Neva and anything else, Save Our Stages.
Yeah.
I've been donating my time. I will always do.
I,
But
I,
how?
I want to do more. I mean, I did an episode with Music Cares. I reached out to the Recording Academy and teamed up with them so I could, it could be an official thing. And I interviewed a couple of buddies of mine that are road guys,
That's cool.
tour managers and stage hands and all that, just to kind of raise awareness because, the musicians are hurting, but at the very least, they can still make some money from, selling records online or something like that. But some of the crew and staff, like,
Yeah,
they're
that's what worries me the
nothing.
most. Yeah, the
Yeah.
crew, the staff, the merch guy, the guitar tech,
Mhm.
the bartenders. You know what I mean? The ticket takers at the venues. There's so many people, and they're out of work, and they all have families, and it's that's the thing that's been that concerns me the most. So I mean, all I can say is I hope that at least sometime in the next few months, if there's a serious downturn in the situation with the pandemic, that we can start getting some smaller venues opened again for some mid-sized shows. I mean, obviously festivals might be a challenge for a while, but I think even then, I want to see live music back, because it's the livelihood of so many people, and this is the thing that we love and appreciate the most is music. So,
Yeah.
and I feel like the government is not doing enough to really support the people there. They just, you know what I mean? They're all too busy, with the election right now, and just all the insanity, and like nitpicking back and forth and all the other shit. So they're not doing anything to help out in the arts and music like they should be right now.
You would think that would be a good election point for them. Like,
Yeah,
hey, I'm gonna go help music, and everybody be like, wow, look at this guy helping out
yeah,
music. But
exactly.
apparently not. And yeah, I mean, and it's rough because some states have different regulations now, so people are kind of like, some people I've seen online recently saying how like, oh, this was all blown out of proportion, and we're overreacting because look, this state is fine. And it's like, yeah, but it's obviously a real thing that's killing people. So we need to
Yeah,
do the right thing to fix everything. But yeah, I'm
yeah,
with you. I'm with you with hoping that the return of live music, because I had a talk with Aaron Turner. He's from band ISIS and
yeah,
Zumock and all that, and
yeah.
he was saying the same thing. How there's no way to replace the feeling you get from being at a live show.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of streaming events and things, but it's not the same. I mean, you want to feel that bass, you want to feel that sound,
Hmm.
just embracing you. There's nothing better than that feeling. And I love rock and roll, obviously, and I love the sound of loud, powerful music. So that's the thing that I want to be out at shows, and it's something that's never waned. From the time that I was going to see our first shows as a kid, and then my teen years when the drinking age was still 18. I could go to see shows. There were shows all the time. There was always some live music happening, and still one of the most important things.
Yeah, man. And I was listening to the audiobook of your book. all these things that I've done, which is fascinating, man, because you've had such an amazing experience and life, leading up to where you are today. And I can see that because I'm kind of similar in that way where, I haven't had the success you've had, but I've been following bands. I have tons of friends that are in bands, and to me, it's the most important thing. I was even in a band for 10 years trying to, do the thing as well. And it's just been the most difficult challenge for myself. And I would assume you that, dealing with this, like not having live music. Bands are putting out new albums, like I mentioned at the top, where, we got Deftones putting out the new record, but when you're making your money off of touring, well, it's kind of got to be disheartening to put out a new record with no tour, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's happened with a lot of bands. I mean, some people have held off on the releases of their records. But bands like the Deftones and the Killers put out their album. There are albums that are coming out, but I think, especially with people like the Killers, said they were already ready to work on a new album and have one out within a year. Like they have a ton of songs. And I think the Deftones probably just decided they didn't want to sit on it as well. And the Pumpkins put out an album, I mean, so there were people that put out albums. Speaking of, it's funny too, because, Deftones and Pumpkins all the same manager. I mean, they
Yeah.
got those albums out. Bino over at Velvet Hammer. But yeah, I mean, that's good. I mean, I think that, what's really interesting is streaming has not slowed down. In fact, the record companies are making more money than ever at this period of time. But I just wish that there was some kind of bailout. I know I said it before, but they've done it in the UK. So like in Ireland and England, they've granted a ton of money to help these venues and help these people that work at these venues and these musicians and giving them grants. The Canadians have always been doing it. I mean, literally, their whole support of the arts is incredible. I mean, if you just are a creative person, you can get money to record. You know what I mean? They guarantee a certain amount of airplay on radio in Canada. It's called CanCon. It's Canadian content, where if you're a rock band or you're even if you're a pop world or whatever country, there's a certain amount of music in each hour that has to actually be a Canadian artist. And that's how they support it and keep it from being completely dominated by US and UK music. So that's a pretty cool thing. I think they have it down, don't you?
Yeah, that's pretty smart. I think we should be doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? And regionally too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big problems is, radio is consolidated so much. I mean, I just taped that Ozzy and Sharon documentary, anniversary of 40th anniversary of Blizzard of Oz. And I'm glad that's going to be syndicated. I have a syndicated radio show I've been doing for almost 10 years called Flashback, which is a classic rock history show around North America that it's on. But I still think there's nothing like localization of radio. I think the problem with a lot of these companies, bigger companies, is they're consolidating too much and they don't pay attention to local music. You'll be the first one to hear this, but I'll be doing a new music show on KLOS coming up soon.
Nice.
Weeks, called New and Approved. It'll be like a rock countdown, but it'll also be new music and local artists too, and
That's
just
great.
a full-on rock thing, which will be cool. So that's going to be starting up on KLOS in 2 or 3 weeks.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah,
I haven't even announced that yet, but you're the first one to hear about that.
Awesome. Well, I mean, this will be on a little bit of delay, so you might get to announce it before I put it out. But but that's incredible because there's really nothing on the radio. I mean, there's rock stations, but it feels like it's always the same handful of songs on repeat. That's and there's no real like MTV is not around doing videos like it used to. Which is kind of disappointing because back in the day, that was how I got most of my music. MTV or whatever was on the radio, and then explore from there. I missed a channel. I don't know if you ever saw this channel called The Box. Were you ever?
Oh yeah, I know about The Box. Yeah, because my friends worked on The Box. In fact, one of the guys, Justin Prager, who would work there, ended up coming and working with me at Farm Club. Remember when I did Farm Club with Jimmy Iovine and Doug Morris, Dr. Dre, and we had like all the hard rock, hip hop, everybody was on that show. It was amazing, actually. And there's a clip of it on the Defiant Ones on HBO of me, Dr. Dre, and Eminem on stage. But everybody played that show. I mean, it was everybody. One week it'd be Godsmack at the Drive-In, Wyclef Jean, Beyonce with Destiny. So I mean, it was everything.
I saw KMFDM on there once. I believe.
Yes, we had KMFDM play as well. So we had some industrial action in there as well.
Yeah.
And it might be Bad Religion. I mean, there was just so many people played on that show. and I loved doing it. I mean, it was so much fun. But there's they're just, that's I think the thing. Playlists are where more people find new music these days, and that's because radio has kind of let them down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it depends on the market. I don't want to, radio I still love. It's my, something been doing for 36 years professionally. That's a long time.
A long time.
I mean, granted, I was, like working for gas money, but I mean, I started doing it professionally in 1984, and I'd done college radio before that. But it's amazing. It's been that many years, Eddie.
Yeah.
And 28 years since I first did MTV. So that's unbelievable. I mean, it's like, I just think about that stuff. It's a long time, and I'm grateful to still be here alive,
Yeah, man. Especially after your accident. I mean, I saw all that go down, and I was just like devastated. Like, I'm glad you've recovered. You seem to be fine. Like, people, when they sustain a major accident like that, sometimes end up getting affected and aren't there as much, or aren't, on top of things. But you're busier than ever. I mean, I looked up all the stuff that you're working on, like working with Ash from Sumerian, bringing back the Hit Parader and Golden Gods and, the Mayhem Festival.
Yeah, we're doing all that, which is really great. And this new TV show called No Cover, which we'll have a home for soon, but it's going to be, a rock show strictly for rock and roll with bands that are unsigned, that are doing original music, which is hence the name No Cover. So it'll be really cool. We'll have a really good time with that. And I mean, I just, all these things, anything to push music forward and help out with music. So, and it's cool working with Josh and Ash on that, because, Ash has Sumerian Records. He recently signed, obviously, as Asking Alexandria, like, I mean, so many bands. I mean, the list goes on and on, but he also signed the Pumpkins recently. And so that show, and we also did this TV show called Paradise City, which, should be out sometime in the near future. But that show was so much fun to do. Ash directed it and co-wrote the show, and it was like Drea Di Matteo from Sons of Anarchy and Sopranos, and Bella Thorne, and there was like Mark Boone Jr. from Sons of Anarchy, who played Bobby. The guy who played Opie from Sons of Anarchy is in the show.
Nice.
The guy who played Billy Walsh and Entourage, man, Reese is in the show. Worked with great people on the show. Really had a great time. And sadly, the young guy, Cameron Boyce, the young actor who was kind of a Disney actor before that, and who died from that seizure. It was like, not brought on by drugs or anything. I mean, it was a condition that he had. It was just the saddest, because he was such a great young guy and really a pleasure to work with on that show. So that show should be coming out soon.
I'm excited for that, man. I saw some of the trailers, and that's one of the things. Like, maybe you have more insight in it, or maybe there isn't any insight, and I'm just kind of hoping for insight. But there was a time when rock music and metal music was dominant. It was dominating the airwaves. It was dominating MTV. There was big festivals everywhere. Like, I was in Florida at the time. We had Zeta Fest and Halloweeny Roast and all this stuff out there. But then there was just like, it just disappeared, and rap music and like more dance kind of reggaeton or hip hop and techno house dance music started taking over, which is fine. I enjoy all of that. I enjoy all music. But it's just kind of sad to see, from going from the top to kind of just being non-existent. We don't have any TV shows. We don't have any radio showing any of that. A lot of places, like Miami, lost their rock station. They had 0 rock stations. So
it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, it's devastating. So it's really inspiring to hear that you're trying to bring it all back, bring more content, more shows, shine more lights on it. But the insight I'm looking at is like, do you know what happened? Like, was it just kind of a decision by the corporations? I don't know, man.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that it's music always takes these interesting shifts. So the people that proclaim rock is dead is bullshit. I mean, rock will never be dead. In fact, during this pandemic, whether it was Taylor guitars, Gibson, Fender, they sold more guitars than ever in the history. I mean, they're having trouble keeping up with guitar sales right now, because people are home, people are creative. People are looking for ways to get that creative outlet and deal with all the pent-up emotion and the things that people are dealing with in their lives right now, the hardships, the changes, the uncertainty. But I think, you know, it's just one of those things where there were periods where, you know, obviously where rock and metal and even alternative music would make it into the pop chart, so it would cross over. But it doesn't mean it's dead and it's not happening. It's just that they're literally, what happens with a lot of those radio stations, depending on which the markets are, is they, whatever the flavor of the month thing is that they can sell. And also because of the cost of maintaining those radio stations, these companies have made this big, you know, grab to, and President Clinton can be blamed for that because he signed this thing called the Telecommunication Act, where you could own 6 or 7 radio stations in one market, and you know he fucked everybody over with that.
That Clear Channel came out of nowhere and took
yeah,
everybody.
well, that's when like you could buy like 20, like, you know, like every mom and pop station and kind of like corner a market. And now because they're finding so much competition, not just with satellite radio, but with streaming and with YouTube and all the other ways that people get music. A lot of the bigger corporations are scrambling to stay profitable. So what they're doing is like they're making DJs, like literally there's some DJs here in LA that I know that are like doing breaks for 5 different markets and they're exhausted.
Gee.
It's like, you know, and that means that those other markets are not localized at all. So if they do a show for LA, you know, they can still keep it local, but the other ones are for like regions. So I mean, if you're going to do that, you know, you might as well, you can, you know, it's the big problem with something like that is eventually people are just going to get bored of it because it doesn't give them anything to grab a hold of about their area. You know what I mean? I mean, I think that what's going to happen, eventually that kind of programming and thinking will implode, and they'll have to sell off a lot of those stations, and hopefully there'll be more mom and pop independently owned radio stations where people can super serve their area and certain different formats of music, you know what I mean? And I think that'll be a great thing because there are certainly a lot of fans out there of rock and roll. And you know what? If those stations become up for grabs, I think those terrestrial radio stations, there are millionaires and billionaires out there that will buy and invest because of their passion, not just because it's a big corporate grab. You know?
Right,
So
right.
we'll see what happens, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to that statement of the rock, you know, rock is dead. I mean, you got to look at Tool dropping their new album after 10, whatever many years it was, and knocking out Taylor Swift from the top spot. You know, that should be a sign right there.
Well, no, you know, it's all bullshit. You know, the people that say rock is dead are just, you know, I think they're, you know, like they're uncreative journalists who are using low hanging fruit because it's just like making a knock on Nickelback. It's like, you really, I mean, are you being creative? Like, you know, what else have you got for us, asshole? You know what I mean? Like those poor guys. Those guys can take so much shit, and they're actually great guys. Whether you like their music or not, they're great guys. Hey, they've been able to write a lot of hits. People talk shit. You know, that's so easy. It's like, come up with something original, douchebag. You know what I mean? Like,
I hear you. I hear you.
You know what I'm saying?
I tell these people all the time, they're like, "Oh my God, Nickelback!" I'm like, selling millions of records though. Someone's buying them. Someone's listening. So maybe you don't like them, but
and look, they're good guys. At least they're playing instruments. You know what I mean? So, you know, like, remember that too.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, that's the same kind of thing where a journalist will declare rock is dead. Yeah, well, I don't know. You know what? I know that there's a lot of great music out there that has never gone away. And again, you know, you'll see like an 8-year-old kid. I was talking to Ozzy about it and Sharon about seeing an 8-year-old Asian kid up there playing, they're riffing Randy Rhoads' Crazy Train on the YouTube or TikTok. And that's real because there are kids out there that love rock and roll. So it's just not the, you know, it may not be in the mainstream, but there is a huge following for it.
Oh yeah, one of the more recent viral things that I've been watching is, I forget her name right now, but it's this little girl. She's been challenging Dave Ghrol to drum offs.
Oh, it's been the best. Yeah,
it's so awesome.
I love that he's doing that. And, you know, even Tom Morello, you know, was involved in one. Is, you know, the whole thing. Those guys are, you know, I always love what Dave said when he was at the Grammys one year or the VMAs. I can't remember where he said it. You know, he and I have been friends since the Nirvana days. And, you know, but I will say that one of the things that he said that I thought was brilliant, he was like, and it was his reaction to like basically how things like American Idol and The Voice and those shows, you know, were not a good thing for music, especially not for rock and roll, right? But
right, yeah.
I mean, but you know, those competition shows, like, who's to say, like how many artists who don't have the perfect voice or pitch have made some of the greatest records of all time. You know what I mean? Not just some asshole up there judging you on a panel. I mean, look, you know, I understand it's entertainment, you know what I mean? And there are people I know that have been judges on the shows that are my friends, right? But I look at the general concept as what Dave Ghrol had called, you know, like just like a complete farce, and saying that, listen, you're supposed to suck when you start out, that you should pick up an instrument, go in your garage, play with your friends, because everybody sucks when they start out. I mean, you just play till you get better. And I love that. That was the thing about Dave Ghrol. He's, you know, the guy's the ambassador of rock. There's no question about it.
Yeah,
Right?
good guy Dave, man. Good guy Dave.
Yeah.
Always out there barbecuing for the firefighters and
Yeah.
helping people out. I mean, it's great that someone of that kind of, I guess, level of fame or popularity can still be so down to earth and helpful. You know, because sometimes, you know, you can get the rock stars that let it get to their heads and they're just douchey, but he's not like that at all, man.
No, he's one of the greatest people ever, and he's you know, I remember. I mean, I've got a lot of different stories about Dave, but one of my favorites is that, you know, all around the same time. And speaking of doing things for the firefighters, that he did. Well, when the album "Wasting Light" came out, I did a lot of different, you know, radio specials with many artists over the years. You know, you name it: Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and you know, and obviously Foo Fighters, and you know, I did "There's Nothing Left to Lose," that album special, in Dave's mom's, you know, family basement where he grew up in Old Town Alexandria. He had a studio down there. And if you watch that documentary Back and Forth, they recorded that album down there as a 3-piece with Learn to Fly and MIA and those songs. He was doing the Wasting Light album. It's part of that documentary for Back and Forth. Now, when I went to his studio out in Northridge, California, 404, we were doing the special for the album. And not many people had heard it yet. I'd watched the documentary in his manager's office, and then I did the interview with the band in the studio, and I was going to catch a red eye home back to the East Coast when I lived in New York, New Jersey. And Dave looks at me and goes, "Hey, Matt, you want to hear the album again?" I thought he meant, do I want to hear the album again? Because, you know, I had like an advance of it, but did I want to hear it in the studio? And
Right.
he goes, I go, "Yeah, man, I love hearing the album." He goes, "No, do you want to hear it live?" And I said, "Yeah." And so if you watch any of those documentaries like Sound City, or, you know, you know, all the different things he did, there is a room, which is like a room they use for isolation for vocals. That's like a vocal booth in the back. That's like, I don't know, 10 by 10 feet, maybe 10 by 12 or 13. And I actually was in there before the pandemic, back in that room where this happened. And, I was still waiting for my flight. I was stuck there. So they set up around me, all 5 Foo Fighters, and it was me against this door. And I'm sitting against the door, and they played all of Wasting Light, which was the new album, start to finish at full volume. And it was the greatest thing in the world. It was just me and them in a circle. And Lou, who runs the studio for Dave, comes in and goes, "Matt, you want to use headphones?" And Dave goes, "Matt doesn't need any fucking headphones. He's been listening to loud music all his life." And so it was amazing. It was ear splitting. You know, the hair stands up on the back of your neck when things like that happen. And that was incredible. But you know, during that album, which was my last album that I loved start to finish by the Foos, was that, because then they were like kind of experimenting with Sonic Highways and that stuff, which was good. But
Yeah.
Wasting Light was like this album where they got back together with Butch Vig and Chris Novoselic from Nirvana came in and played bass.
Yeah.
And he did it analog at Dave's house. I mean, the record was incredible. The thing was, we were doing a promotion. There were 2 other times I watched him do the whole album all the way through. One was had a great relationship with David Letterman. So they went and played on Letterman. And then when the show was over, they used to do a thing called After Letterman. So in the old Ed Sullivan Theater, bands would play afterwards. Incubus have done it. So many bands have done it. And I remember, so they come out in suits like the Beatles, and they have a fake set like the Beatles, which they did use on Letterman that night. But it's got like, it looks exactly like when the Beatles opened with "All My Lovin'" on Ed Sullivan in 1964.
Wow.
They had the actual set, and then they did all of Wasting Light, the whole album, and then they did another hour and a half of hits. And then
Wow.
all of a sudden, Taylor Hawkins, the drummer, looks over and goes, Dave goes, hey, it's hard to do this drumming for this long in a suit. It's not like the Beatles who had 3 songs to do on the show. You know what I mean? It was so funny. They were all in suits. But, I mean, they just played for 3 hours. And that was actually, I did see him do that album 4 times. This is the other thing. But when you brought up the firefighters and him doing the barbecuing, we did a promotion on a radio station in New York City where I was doing the morning show, which was called the Foo Fighters Blackberry Tour. When it was sponsored by Blackberry, which no longer exists, obviously. It's no longer there. But Blackberries, when they were still existing, people had to write in and tell us why Foo Fighters should come and play in their garage. And the one that Dave Ghrol and the band picked was a first responder fireman who responded at 9/11, whose lungs were burned in there, but was a huge Foos fan. But he was in pretty good shape. He just had to retire, obviously, because of that. Yeah. Well, do you know that Dave and his mom, too, like his family, and all the Foos got there early to this guy's house in Yonkers, New York, and they like hung out with him all day, and then they played in his garage for a bunch of firefighters and the police, like all the guys that were there at 9/11, and in this guy's yard, and then in his garage, and we, you know, I'm talking to the guy, and I go, well, Dave wants to know what you want to hear. He goes, well, I've been streaming the new album. I want to hear that. So again, do the whole Wasting Light album, and then of course they did My Hero and dedicated it to him because, you know, he was a first responder.
Yeah.
And then I saw him do it one more time, Lollapalooza, the night before they played Lollapalooza that year. I was out working at Lollapalooza and shooting, and they were at the legendary Cabaret Metro, and they went up, and that night they did a show, and they played all of Wasting Light and then another hour and a half. So man, he's like at that level where like Springsteen, where he likes to play 3-4 hour shows and just do it all, you know?
Yeah. That's love right there. That's passion of his art, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing. So I give him a lot of credit for being the true ambassador of rock. And like you said, when you brought it up, it was about that girl, that young girl, and doing the drum off with him. It's just fun. And, you know, he being very close to his mom and his sister, and Dave being, you know, just a guy who he loves his daughters. You know, I could see where he would nurture, you know, a young kid like that. And do you remember the other thing that they did when they were all doing? There were like 100 drummers in Italy or something or more, where they did that big outdoor thing where they all played Foo Fighters song at the same time.
I don't know if I saw that.
That was absolutely incredible. And that was a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think of when it took place, but it was, you know, like it was this crazy. I'm going to try and find it for you right now. But, you know,
sure, yeah.
I
know my buddy Dave Whitty. My buddy Dave Whitty from Municipal Waste did a drum circle thing like that with like 100 drummers, but I don't know if it's the same one.
Yeah, this one was 1,000 drummers. The Rocket 1,000, and it's Learn to Fly. And there's actually video of this.
Oh, wow.
Is that unbelievable? I mean,
yeah, 1,000 drummers.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He's just the Rocket 1,000 invites you to audition for the world's biggest virtual concert. That was something else. Oh, maybe they're doing a new one. This might be something else. No, but it was a ton of drummers, and I can't remember when it was. You know, it was Learn to Fly, so it might be the same people that did it originally. But it was in a country like Italy, and I mean, you know, that's got to be what a rush. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I used to tease Taylor Hawkins, you know, from Foo Fighters, about when you're watching the documentary for Back and Forth, his look on his face when he's at Wembley Stadium and he's just looking. I go, dude, it's the funniest thing when you're like this look on your face. He goes, man, yeah, because it was the wildest fucking thing in the world. We looking out at all those people watching us play. It was like a dream come true. But
yeah, there is no feeling that replicates that feeling of being on stage, man, especially when you're in front of that many people and they're singing your music back at you. I mean, I've told the story before on the podcast where I used to be a stagehand for a bit during the time that I was in a band, and I would work at the arena and build stages for, you know, Aerosmith or Rod Stewart or The Who or Cream, anything like that. We did Cream was fun. But I did Billy Joel one day. It was 2006. And I got to do stage call and be on the stage when he was performing Piano Man. And I'm just standing there by the stage, you know, making sure nobody jumped up on the stage or whatever. and it was just such a ridiculous feeling hearing everyone singing back Piano Man to him. And it's not my song, but I still felt that surge of the crowd and that energy of just being there. It's insane.
That's great. So you built those stages for those different people. So you were at the Cream reunion shows?
Yeah, yeah. That was over in Florida. It was I believe, the Bank Atlantic Center. We did the Cream reunion shows. We did the
Is that
Who.
down in the Miami area? Is that where it was? Or
Broward, which is like just 30 minutes north of
yeah,
Miami. Yeah,
yes, that's amazing. Yeah, because
yeah.
did you see that documentary, Beware of Mr. Baker? The one about Ginger Baker, the drummer of Cream, and how
No.
you gotta watch that documentary sometime. It's amazing. It starts with him breaking the nose of the documentary maker with a cane. And then it ends with the same thing, and you find out why he broke his nose. Because he told them that he was going to go call. Now he was going to go interview his ex-wives. And he goes, "No, I'll put you in a hospital." He fucking hits him with a cane in the nose and breaks his nose. It's
Oh
bleeding.
my God.
Oh man, yeah, he's a character, and he also was such a shit talker. He was so funny. He's talking shit about jamming with Mick Jagger when he was young. Then he goes. He actually says about Keith Moon and John Bonham, two of my favorite drummers of all time. He goes, "Those guys, Keith Moon and John Bonham, couldn't swing a bag of shit." What are you talking about? It's genius. Just because you're like, this guy's out of fucking control.
I gotta watch it. I gotta watch it for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and my biggest memory from that tour. I mean, I don't know if I should even be saying this. I'm gonna tell you the story, and if you think I should cut it out, I'll cut it out. But basically, I was setting up the stage, and one of the sound guys walks up to me, and he's like, "Hey, do you know where we can find some trees?" And I was just like, "For the stage, you want some trees?" And he's like, "No, some trees." I'm like, "Oh." I guess I could probably find some. I'm not a drug dealer or anything. I don't know where to get it. I mean, I got some friends that can probably get it. And I ended up finding like an ounce of marijuana for the sound guy. And I'm like, "Is this for you? Or is this somebody in the band that wants it?" And he's like, "Well, it's for somebody in the band." I'm like, "Well, then it's going to cost you a little extra. I want to meet the band."
Yeah.
The guy took me to the tour bus, and I got to meet Clapton and the band, and and I guess one of them wanted a big bag of marijuana.
I'm guessing it was probably Ginger Baker, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
probably.
Jack Bruce, or maybe Jack Bruce. I know it's not Clapton because he's been clean and sober for a long time.
Yeah.
But he probably didn't give a shit. You know what I mean? Because he's it's really funny in that Beware of Mr. Baker documentary. He's like, that's really because of him and Jack Bruce fighting. That's why Cream broke up in the first place. And then he was starting Blind Faith, the band with Steve Winwood that did one album, and he said. Ginger Baker shows up at his house. He goes, "Oh shit! I just thought I just got past this." Like it was. Oh, it's an incredible documentary. Anybody who loves rock should watch it. It's just the reason it says "Beware of Mr. Baker" is he was living in South Africa and he had this big house in his driveway. He just said "Beware of Mr. Baker," not beware of his dogs. And, it's really, really.
He's way more dangerous than the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible. So Eddie, yeah. So how's everything else been going with you during this whole pandemic thing?
Things have been good, man. I can't complain. I've actually been very lucky and blessed that I can work from home. I've been working from home at my day job, which is a video game company. They keep the lights on, and then the podcast has been doing better than ever. Thankfully, this Zoom type deal has been taking off. So been doing 3 or 4 a week, which is more than I was doing before. I was doing 1 a week, and now I'm up to like 3 or 4 a week, and talking to amazing people like yourself, and
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. That's
amazing,
great.
amazing musicians, and just trying to keep my mental health up, which is it's a problem for a lot of people,
Well,
especially
I
during
mean,
this time.
I relapsed during COVID, which is it was publicly known. Because my friends put together a GoFundMe for me to go into treatment. I had relapsed, because I was isolated. And I started drinking vodka again, and it doesn't agree with me. At my age, I mean, look, I party with every fucking musician in the world, and there's some of them that are still with us and some that are not, and a lot of people that got clean and sober. And at the end of the day, it's just not good for me. I mean, I've taken it as far as anybody could go without dying. And that's the thing about alcoholism. It creeps up on you, and it's a progressive disease in the sense that if you're an alcoholic, you don't like all of a sudden, hey, I haven't drank in 2 years. Now it's gonna be like I was when I was 16. No, you leave off, you pick up right where you left off. I mean, your body is already in your chemistry and your mind and everything else. It's already changed so much. So I started drinking. It was not a good thing. My friends have figured that out. They put together a GoFundMe to help me out. A lot of musicians came out there and, like really like people, all these people, donated, like, you name it, like Perry Farrell and, Johnny from the Goo Goo Dolls and Brent from Shinedown and, tons of people I worked with at different places, anonymously, people like Rollins and Tom Morello and all these other people, all, just wanted to see me go well. I mean, they were concerned. They didn't want to lose me during this period. And, I was ready to get treatment at that period of time. And it was great that I got to go. I came out now, I'm almost 5 months sober and clean, obviously.
Congrats.
Because, and then, Rolling Stone did that article, and then they wanted to do a second article where I really got very transparent and told my entire story about my alcoholism and addiction, and where it stems from originally. But I think the thing that was beautiful about having the opportunity to use that platform was that it reached people all over the world because of Rolling Stone. It was
I mean,
Australia, France, UK, and I got letters from everywhere. Like people reached out to me on my socials, telling me how much it meant to them. They were going through the same thing because people weren't talking about how the pandemic was affecting people that were isolated, that were in recovery, which is causing a lot of people to drink more, like that weren't in recovery. People, I mean, alcohol sales have accelerated, but it also meant relapses like myself for a lot of people. But I'm on a good path now, and I exercise constantly. I go to online meetings. You can do Zoom meetings. There are some social distancing meetings in Los Angeles that I've been attending. I feel great. I feel better than ever, man. I just and I got over that hump. And I don't want to go back to it. So, like I said, 5 months in. I'm coming up on 5 months, and there's no better community than Los Angeles for sobriety, for recovery. I mean, because it's tons of cool people, and it's a lot of people in the music in the entertainment industry, a lot of musicians, a lot of comedians, even a lot of sports dudes. I mean, it's this whole circle of people that are part of my fellowship and community, and I'm really grateful for them. So I'm good, man, and that's one of the things I'm doing, and I just want to give back and be of service and help other people, spread that message that people can get well, especially in these times where people are struggling financially with a lot of uncertainty, as I said before.
Yeah, no jobs, no concerts.
No concerts, no way to blow off steam. So.
Yeah, and I for you, was it more of a physical? Was it a physical downturn for you, or was it more mental with the alcohol? Like, why the reason it's such a problem? Is it because your body was breaking down, or was it more?
Yeah, it was a little
mental?
both. I mean, I think it was but I think a lot of it was the fact that I was so used to working out. Exercising was very, very important part of my recovery and giving me strength. So the fact that I couldn't do any exercise, really, I mean, there was much to do at home at the time. And, but also I think, there's like, it was just this crazy time in the world. And, so that was it. It was a little bit, I would say it was a little bit of both, but definitely, when I can exercise and work out, I mean, I know that a lot of other guys and women in recovery would say the same thing. It really helps, like really balance things, it centers you, you know what I mean? Besides, the fellowship and recovery, it's really, really, exercise is super important, and that's coming from a guy who got hit by a car, thrown, 15 feet in the air, head went through a windshield, tore my head open, broke my leg in half. I came back from all of that. And, most people would never even imagine that actually happened to me, but it did, obviously.
And that's also when that happens to some people, that's also a gateway to getting more addicted to like painkillers and other things to recover from the accident alone.
Yeah, and I fought that. The thing was, there was no way I couldn't be on painkillers because my leg had snapped in half and I had a compound fracture. The bone was sticking out. So, and my head was completely torn open and my right ear was hanging off the bottom of it. They sewed that back together. But, when it came down to the painkillers in the hospital, and then after, I mean, I only took the minimal amount that that I literally I was cautious of that. I mean, I weaned myself off those pretty much immediately, because that was never really my thing anyway,
Mm-hmm.
But booze certainly was. I mean, I DJ'd in rock nightclubs for, from the time I was 17, 18 years old. And booze was always free, and people would offer you blow and speed and whatever, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And it's that lifestyle in the concerts, also just being
Yeah,
around the bands. Everybody's having a drink. Everybody's like, "Oh, let me buy you a shot. Oh, let me get you a
yeah,
beer." It's hard. You fall into that, and some people don't think about that. You think, "Oh, you're having a great time. You're hanging out with rock stars. Everything's great." And then you get into pandemic, and you realize, like, no, now my body's used to being out drinking and partying, and now what do I do? Where do I, and that's where alcohol sales go up. You
yeah,
know?
yeah. And like for me, it was just like I wasn't drinking, and that was the thing. But then picking up that bottle was, it can escalate quickly. The bottom line is because everybody's body and chemistry makeup changes as they get older. Now that I'm older, I mean, it's just not healthy for me. I mean, especially since you got to think about the fact that my body had to do so much healing after being hit by a car, and so that alcohol will affect my legs. You know what I mean? And it will, it'll make things really bad, and you've also got to worry about clots and everything else.
Yeah.
But right now,
Thins your blood and everything. Yeah.
yeah, I got a clean bill of health. Though. I mean, I went to the doctors and they checked me for everything. My liver and kidney are perfectly functioning. My white and red
That's
blood
great.
cells, no disposition, no predisposition to diabetes. It's incredible how resilient my body has been, and I plan on treating it well and treating it right. So,
That's good.
I mean, that's
Good.
what I'm doing. But I mean, I'm grateful to be alive and grateful to be hanging here with you and talking about music and doing our thing.
Oh yeah, man. And,
Yeah.
and busier than ever, like I said, bringing back a Hit Parader and Golden Gods and Mayhem, and you're doing the rock and roll roast too. Is that something you're bringing back as well?
Yeah, we're bringing that back. We're doing that show called No Cover. Paradise City, the show that I was in, like 5 episodes, is coming out. I'm still doing stuff for Access TV, like the Top 10 Revealed. I'm involved with my syndicated show Flashback, which is a classic rock history show that's on all over the country. I'll have been hosting it for 10 years in January. It's coming up on its 10-year anniversary, which is
Yeah.
pretty amazing. So I'm
You've been doing
grateful,
you've
man.
been doing chats too, right? You've been doing a lonely
Oh, I've been doing,
place.
yeah, In a Lonely Place is like, yeah, this online show that started, I was doing it for Music Cares and to raise money and awareness. And I've been doing that, and it's a weekly show that I do. I was doing it originally from my living room, like we're doing it right now, but now I'm doing it on a studio that we have, like on Ventura Boulevard over in Studio City. So I've been doing it from there, but it's, talking to people about their favorite albums, and all those episodes are out there on YouTube and can be seen if you look it up. It's In a Lonely Place with Matt Pinfield. And the reason I named it that is because so many of us were in a lonely place, stuck
Yeah,
in our homes. And it's a great name of a Humphrey Bogart movie. It's a Smithereens, a New Order song. I mean, it's been, that name. It's just a cool name.
yeah.
It's
No,
funny.
it's a great.
Yeah.
It works. It's a good
Yeah.
marketing thing too, as
Yeah.
well, just because of the time and everything.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
really what it's for. I'll have to change the name once we get everything up and running again. You know what I mean? For sure. But
yeah,
it's definitely it's good for now. But Eddie, man, I want to thank you like so much for having me on, man.
for sure, brother, for sure.
You
And
know?
everybody that's listening, make sure to follow Matt Pinfield. Matthew Pinfield, right, is on
Yeah. So I'll
socials.
tell you. Yeah, well, there's three. So on Facebook, it's Matthew Pinfield. Okay. And you'll know because there's a picture of me on stage with sunglasses with a crowd at Rock and Rio behind me, 150,000 people on stage. And then there's another picture of me with a beard at that point in a Queen shirt and a jacket. Then these are like my profile pictures. And then in the second one, which is Instagram, it's at Matthew Pinfield with 2 T's. And then the one that actually has my most recognizable name, the way it should be, is Twitter, and that's at Matt Pinfield, MattPinfield. So all of those. The thing was, I couldn't get the domains for Matt Pinfield on the other two, which is
Hmm.
a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
I mean, right? But they're actually, oddly enough, I did meet one Matthew Pinfield from England who's in a band, which is wild because when
That's
I was
cool.
growing up, I didn't know anybody with my last name. It's an English last name from where most metal comes from, like and hard rock comes from. We're Priest, Sabbath, Slade and all those guys are from the Black Country, the Midlands, Birmingham. That's where the name Pinfield comes from.
Right.
Like Peaky Blinders, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Birmingham, yeah. And that's where it's really where my last name comes from. It's an English name.
Cool.
But it's pretty funny. But yeah, listen. So Eddie, this was a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thank you for your time. You're an inspiration, man. Like I said, I've been watching you since I was young. It's thanks to you that I've discovered so much music. I was always fascinated by your ability to retain all that information from all the different bands. Like you knew every member and every record studio, and it's crazy, man. So thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, man, it was really a pleasure, Eddie. You know, and like I said, you know, people want to check out the book that I wrote. Got
Yes.
it's on paperback on Amazon. You can order it. It's I saw that there were some hardcover ones for sale, but I thought the hardcover went out of print. It's on Audible, and it's on books on CD, and it's on Kindle. And it's not me, sadly, reading the. I was so crazy. I moved to San Francisco. I was doing a morning show, doing a night show, doing a podcast, and doing 2 syndicated shows all at once. So the only thing I couldn't do was narrate my own Audible and book on CD. I wish now in retrospect I had the time to do so, but it's someone else reading it, but it still sounds great, right? I mean, it's still good. You listen to it, right? So
Yep.
it was cool.
I enjoyed it quite a bit. So yeah, definitely all these things that I've done, my insane, improbable rock life, make sure to check it out. You know, if you don't have time to sit down and read a book, get it on Audible, and there's free trials and everything. So you can even, you know, use that free credit they give you.
Use a free credit and then cancel it if you want.
Exactly.
Sorry, I probably shouldn't be saying that, but you know, like, listen, if you want to check out my book, please do. It'd be really cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't know how many people do that. You know, they find out a show, they're like, well, there's another season of Dexter or Goliath, and then they watch, they subscribe to cable for like, and then the show ends and they're like, drop it.
Bye. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey, I understand. You know, you got to save money where you can, right? You know.
Sure.
But anyway, it's funny. But listen, Eddie, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care, Matt. Hopefully we can stay in touch, brother. Take
care.
Yeah,
we will. And we'll definitely hook up and go to a show together as soon as this thing passes.
Please. That'd be great. That'd be great.
Yeah, man. We'll have a good hang, talking music, grab some food. You know, we'll do something.
That'd be awesome.
I always enjoy doing that. All right, Eddie. Take care, man. Have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
All right. Take care.